"Are you still a virgin?" The question detonated in the heavy, warm air, hanging between them like a newly sharpened blade waiting for gravity to take hold. Ariella slowly lifted her gaze from the deep red swirl in her wine glass. She found Luca Bernini positioned against a massive marble pillar. That characteristic, infuriatingly casual smirk stretched across his perfect lips. The exclusive private gathering hummed around them. A low, sophisticated buzz of hushed conversation and the delicate clinking of crystal. But his voice, laced with malicious intent, had cut through the din with surgical precision. "I'm sorry." What she blinked at the capo, convinced the sheer absurdity of the moment had caused her to mishear him. "You heard me." Luca's grin widened, his eyes, dark and lively, dancing with pure mischief. "Are you still a virgin?" Ariella Monroe, a deep, mortifying heat rushed up her neck, staining her cheeks crimson. 3 weeks in Bari. 3 weeks working as a translator for what she had sincerely believed was a completely legitimate import-export company. And somehow, she had landed in this exclusive, opulent setting, surrounded by the most notorious and dangerous men in Italy, only to be subjected to the most invasive and irrelevant question of her 20 years. She knew she should have been utterly humiliated. She should have turned on her heel and walked out the nearest exit. But something in Luca's casual, almost playful tone, combined with the warm, reckless buzz of the wine in her veins, dissolved her caution. "Losing it today, actually." The words escaped her mouth, bold, careless, and entirely defiant, accompanied by a quick, challenging smile that perfectly matched his energy. Luca's dark eyebrows shot up toward his hairline, his expression a mask of delighted shock. Several nearby conversations instantly sputtered and died, and then, without warning, the entire room seemed to drop 10 degrees in temperature. Ariella didn't need to see him. She felt him first, an oppressive pressure in the atmosphere. Dante Vitali materialized silently beside her, a sudden storm rolling in from the Adriatic coast. He was pure, controlled fury, meticulously packaged in an impeccably tailored black suit that cost more than her annual tuition. His hand settled heavily on the back of her chair, and his grip was so tight that she distinctly heard the distressed would protest with a low creak. With who his voice was quiet, terrifyingly deadly, stripped of the careful, measured modulation he usually reserved for their late-night translation sessions. The entire room was now utterly silent. Ariella's heart hammered a frantic, desperate rhythm against her ribs as she looked up at her boss, her intensely enigmatic employer, the man who rarely spoke to her beyond necessary professional instructions, the one who watched her with dark, unreadable eyes. Except, she realized, she could read them perfectly now. The fury radiating off him was unmistakable, raw, deeply visceral, and completely irrational, given that he had never once indicated any kind of personal interest in her whatsoever. "I was joking," she managed, her voice coming out far smaller and thinner than she intended. "Luca asked a ridiculous question, and I gave a ridiculous answer." It wasn't ridiculous. Luca's mischievous amusement had completely evaporated, replaced by a tense formality. It was inappropriate. "My apologies, Ariella." But Dante wasn't even looking at Luca. His focus remained ruthlessly locked on Ariella. His jaw clenched so tightly, she could see the muscle jumping beneath the smooth skin. "You thought that was funny, announcing something like that in a room full of men who would immediately take it as an invitation. I didn't think anyone would actually care about a joke." She stood, firmly refusing to crane her neck to meet his demanding eyes. Even in the highest heels she owned, he still towered over her 5'4" frame. "And I certainly didn't expect you to care." Something swift and complex flickered across his dark, guarded expression. "You don't know what I care about because you never tell me anything. You barely speak to me unless it's strictly about work." The reckless words tumbled out, fueled by the wine, the confusion, and the cumulative exhaustion of 3 weeks spent walking on figurative eggshells around a man who made her pulse race violently every time he entered a room. "So, forgive me if I didn't realize my hypothetical virginity was suddenly a matter of great concern to you." His hand moved instantly from the wooden chair to her elbow. The touch was surprisingly gentle, a stark contrast to the sheer, volatile tension radiating through his body. We need to talk privately. Dante. An older man approached them, silver-haired and possessing an unmistakable air of supreme command. Introduce me to your guest. Dante's grip on her elbow tightened fractionally. A brief warning, before he smoothly released her, shifting his posture into a stance of deep, almost theatrical deference Ariella had never witnessed from him before. Don Romani, this is Ariella Monroe, the translator I mentioned. She's been assisting with the international contracts. The Don's eyes were like twin shards of ice, sharp and penetrating as they clinically assessed her. Marco Monroe's daughter. It was a statement, not a question, and the familiar, casual use of her father's name sent a shaft of sudden ice through her veins. You knew my father, I did. He was a good man, brilliant with numbers. He worked for our family before you were even born. The Don's formidable expression softened slightly, a hint of genuine nostalgia appearing. I was sorry to hear of his passing. He spoke of you often in those final months, wanted to ensure you'd be protected if you ever came to Italy. The world abruptly tilted beneath Ariella's feet. She grabbed the edge of a nearby table, trying desperately to anchor herself and process this monumental information. Her father had been a quiet, careful accountant, a man who had raised her alone after her mother's death. He had never once mentioned Italy, never even hinted at any connection to powerful, shadowy families like this one. Protected from what the question came out steadier than she felt inside. Old debts, old enemies, the kind of shadows that follow men who choose to leave this life. Don Romani paused, his piercing gaze momentarily meeting Dante's. Which is precisely why I tasked my most trusted underboss with watching over you, ensuring your internship was legitimate, your housing secure, your safety guaranteed. Underboss. The word struck her consciousness like a physical, debilitating blow. Not merely her intimidating employer, not just the stern man who reviewed her translations with meticulous, demanding attention. He was the second in command of an actual functioning mafia family. I need air. Ariella moved swiftly toward the terrace doors without waiting for a single word of permission. The cool evening breeze whipping off the Adriatic Sea helped clear some of the suffocating fog from her mind. She gripped the heavy stone railing, staring blankly out at Bari's lights reflecting like scattered jewels on the dark water. Behind her, she heard the thick terrace doors open and close with a heavy, final sound. You're angry. Dante's voice came from several feet away, granting her the space she desperately needed. I'm confused. There's a difference. She didn't turn around. Was any of it real? The internship, the small apartment near the university, the work you gave me? All of it was real. Your skills are genuine. Your translation's excellent. I didn't fabricate your qualifications. He moved closer, and she felt the distinct heat radiating from his body at her back. But yes, I arranged the opportunity. Your father asked me specifically to watch over you if you ever came to Italy. I owed him that much. Why? She finally spun around to face him. What did my father do for you that created this kind of debt? Dante remained silent for a long, heavy moment, the moonlight carving stark shadows across his angular, disciplined features. He looked older than his 34 years right now, burdened by responsibilities she couldn't even begin to comprehend. He saved my life. I was 23, reckless, thought I was invincible, made enemies I wasn't equipped to handle. His jaw tightened visibly with the painful memory. Your father discovered they'd been skimming substantial money from family accounts, quietly building the necessary resources to move against me. He brought me proof, helped me expose them before they could strike. Several men died because of that information. And my father left immediately after. Told Don Romani he was done with this world, that he had a daughter who deserved far better than growing up in the shadows. Dante's intensely dark eyes met hers, holding her gaze steadily. The Don let him go with full honors, set him up in America with a completely clean slate. Your father never looked back, not until he was dying. The scattered, confusing pieces were finally snapping into place. He contacted you then. He sent a letter 3 months before he passed away. Said you'd been accepted to a study abroad program in Italy. Asked if I could personally ensure you stayed safe during your time here. Dante's expression softened. A fleeting, almost painful vulnerability. I promised I would. I've kept that promise. By lying to me for 3 weeks, by protecting you from information that could put you in danger. The less you knew about your father's past, the safer you were. He took another deliberate step closer. That changed tonight. Because of what I said to Luca. Understanding, sharp and cold, dawned in her eyes. People will think we're involved now. That I'm under your protection in a different way. They already thought that. Your joke just confirmed it. Frustration and pure exhaustion bled through his tightly controlled exterior. Do you understand what you did in this world? Perception is everything. You just told a room full of dangerous men that you're available, that you're willing, that any of them could be the one to. I was joking, she interrupted, the sound of her voice ringing sharply in the night air. I didn't know the rules of whatever intricate game you're all playing. It's not a game. It's survival. He was close enough now that she could clearly smell his cologne. Something dark, expensive, and deeply masculine. And you just made yourself a target. Then tell me the rules. Stop treating me like I'm too fragile to handle the truth. She lifted her chin defiantly, meeting his intensity with her own unyielding stare. I'm not a child, Dante. Stop protecting me from reality. I'm protecting you from my reality, which is violence and bloodshed and moral compromises you can't even begin to imagine. His hand came up fast, gripping the stone railing beside her head, effectively caging her against the cold stone barrier. You're 20 years old. Brilliant. With your whole life ahead of you, you should be in classrooms and libraries, not tangled up in mafia politics. Maybe I don't want safe and predictable. Her heart hammered wildly against her ribs at his intense proximity. Maybe I'm tired of everyone deciding what's best for me. You don't know what you're saying. Don't I? She searched his face, seeing the fierce, internal war raging behind his dark eyes. You've been watching me for weeks. I felt it every single time you're in a room. The way you track my movements. How you constantly position yourself between me and everyone else. That's not just obligation to my father. His other hand came up, framing her face. The touch was achingly gentle, despite the electric tension vibrating through him. No, it's not. Then what is it? A problem I don't know how to solve. His thumb traced the sharp line of her cheekbone, a feather-light touch. You ask too many questions. You're fearless when you should be cautious. You walk into my office like you belong there. Challenge my decisions. Make me actually consider perspectives I've dismissed for years. That's bad. It's dangerous. You make me think about things beyond duty and power. You make me want things I have absolutely no right to want. His forehead dropped, coming to rest heavily against hers. And when Luca asked that question, when you answered like it meant nothing, I wanted to destroy everyone in that room for even hearing you say it. Her breath hitched painfully in her throat. Dante, I know it's wrong. I know I'm too old, too damaged, too deep in this world to offer you anything good. His voice roughened with desperate need. But I can't stop wanting you anyway. The confession hung between them, raw, honest, and utterly exposed. Ariella's logical mind screamed that this was complicated, dangerous, and probably the worst idea she had ever entertained. But her heart, her traitorous, reckless heart, had already made its choice weeks ago. During late nights reviewing contracts, stolen glances across the conference table, and those brief moments when his rare smile transformed his entire, severe face. What if I want you to? The whisper felt like deliberately jumping off a very high cliff. His control shattered. The kiss was nothing like the aggressive, demanding fantasy she'd entertained during restless nights alone. It was careful and almost reverent, as if he was genuinely terrified of breaking her. His large hands cradled her face with a gentleness that contradicted every single thing she knew about his capacity for violence and ruthlessness. Ariella melted into him, her fingers gripping the expensive fabric of his suit jacket for necessary balance. As the world spun, he tasted distinctly of whiskey and the cold promise of winter. And when his tongue swept lightly against her lower lip, an explicit request for deeper permission, she granted it without the slightest hesitation. The kiss deepened, still fundamentally controlled, yet now edged with a desperate, burgeoning hunger. Dante's hand slid into her hair, angling her head to gain better access. A small, involuntary sound escaped her throat, and she felt the powerful tremor that ran through his body against hers. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard and raggedly, he didn't pull away fully. His hands remained gentle on her face, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones as he studied her with an intense scrutiny that made her feel truly seen in a way she had never experienced. "This changes everything," he said quietly, his voice raspy. "I know there will be severe consequences, difficult questions, dangers I can't fully protect you from. I'm not asking you to protect me from everything. Just don't lie to me anymore." She covered his hands with hers, urging him closer. "Tell me the truth. Teach me the rules. Let me make informed choices. Even if those choices lead somewhere dark, even then." He kissed her again, softer this time, a binding, unspoken promise. When he finally pulled back, some of the rigid tension had visibly left his shoulders. "We should go back inside. Disappearing together will only fuel speculation and accelerate rumors." "Let them speculate." But she took a step away from the railing, smoothly smoothing her dress with shaking hands. Dante caught her wrist gently, stopping her. "Ariella, what you said to Luca about losing your virginity, was any of that true?" Heat flooded her face again, the earlier defiance momentarily gone. "Does it matter? To me, yes." His thumb traced small, slow circles on her pulse point, sending nervous energy through her. "Because if it's true, if you're planning to be with someone, I need to know. Need to make absolutely sure they're worthy of you, that they'll treat you with the respect you deserve." And if I said I was planning to be with you, the question hung between them, heavy and loaded with implications neither of them could take back. Dante's eyes darkened immediately, and she watched him physically wrestle with his renowned self-control. "Then I tell you we're doing this right. No rushed decisions, no taking advantage of confusion and fear." He released her wrist, though the sudden loss of contact felt like a physical ache. "You deserve better than a decision made in the aftermath of revelations and danger. What if I know what I want or you think you do, but tomorrow in the clear daylight, when you've had time to process everything you learned tonight, you might feel differently?" He straightened his suit jacket, meticulously rebuilding the invisible wall she had briefly seen crumble. "I can wait. I've been waiting 3 weeks already. A little longer won't kill me." The pure, unexpected consideration in his words made her chest tight with emotion. This man, this dangerous underboss who commanded fear and respect, was treating her choice and her consent like something sacred and fragile. They returned to the gathering together, and the room's energy shifted profoundly the moment they appeared in the doorway. Conversations subtly paused and then resumed, but Ariella felt the undeniable weight of dozens of eyes tracking their every movement. Luca approached them immediately, his expression now serious and chastened. "I apologize again for my earlier comment. It was inappropriate and disrespectful." "It's fine," Ariella said quickly, though it clearly wasn't fine at all. "It's not." Dante's voice carried a hard, cutting edge, "but it's addressed. Make sure the others understand she's under family protection now. Full protection." The sharp emphasis on those last 2 words seemed to signify something Ariella didn't fully grasp, but Luca nodded sharply, instantly deferential. "So of course, I'll spread the word immediately." The rest of the evening passed in a confusing blur. Dante stayed physically close, but not possessively so, introducing her to various family members with careful, abbreviated explanations of her role and her father's history. She met his touch with calculated distance, acutely aware that they were performing for an audience, but sometimes their eyes would meet across the room, and the blazing heat in his gaze made her forget about pretense entirely. It was nearly midnight when Dante finally guided her toward the main exit. "I'm taking you home. My driver will ensure you arrive safely. You're not coming? I have business to attend to here. Things that absolutely do not concern you." He walked her all the way to the waiting car, opening the door for her himself. "Lock your doors tonight. Don't answer for anyone except my driver tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning you're not going back to your apartment. It's not secure anymore." He stated it like it was the most obvious fact in the world. "I've arranged a much safer location. We'll discuss the necessary details tomorrow." Before she could protest or formulate a single question, he leaned in close, his lips brushing the delicate shell of her ear. "Sleep well, Ariella. Dream of better men than me." Then he was gone, striding back toward the opulent villa while she sat stunned and disoriented in the back of the luxury car. The driver navigated Bari's quiet, late-night streets with practiced ease. Ariella watched the city lights blur past, trying desperately to organize her wildly scattered thoughts into something coherent. Her father had worked for the Mafia. She'd been under intense surveillance for 3 weeks. Her boss was an underboss who had just kissed her like she was oxygen and he was suffocating. Normal had officially left the building and relocated to another continent. Her student apartment felt significantly smaller than usual when she finally arrived. The driver walked her directly to her door, waiting patiently until she securely locked it before departing. Through the window, she watched him immediately park across the street, clearly settling in for a long night of professional surveillance. Ariella's roommate, Jessica, was already soundly asleep. Ariella moved quietly through the small space, changing into her pajamas and washing her face while her mind compulsively replayed every single moment of the dramatic evening. Sleep seemed impossible, but sheer exhaustion eventually won the battle. She finally drifted off, the last coherent thought being the memory of Dante's hands cupping her face. The way he trembled as if she truly had the terrifying power to undo him completely. Morning came far too soon. Ariella woke abruptly to her phone buzzing insistently. An unknown number. "Hello, good morning." Dante's voice was all sharp business, professional and remote. There was absolutely no trace of last night's intense vulnerability. "My driver will collect you in 1 hour. Pack enough for a week." "A week, Dante. I have classes, I have commitments, which I've already handled. Your professors have been informed you're dealing with a family emergency. Your absence is officially excused." He continued quickly before she could protest further. "This isn't negotiable, Ariella. Last night made you visible to people who absolutely do not share my interest in keeping you safe. So, I'm just supposed to disappear, let you completely control my entire life for now. Yes, until I neutralize the immediate threat." His tone softened marginally, a hint of the man from the terrace returning. "I know you value your independence. I respect that, but please trust me on this." She wanted desperately to argue, to assert her autonomy and firmly refuse to be managed. But the vivid memory of his hands shaking as he held her, the genuine underlying fear in his voice when he'd asked about her joke, made her pause. 1 week, she finally agreed, a reluctant compromise. "And you tell me everything. No more protecting me from information." "Agreed. 1 hour, Ariella." He ended the call before she could offer a final response. Jessica emerged from her room, bleary-eyed and confused. "Was that your boss? Why are you packing? Family emergency." Ariella lied smoothly, hating how easily the deception came now. "I'll be gone about a week. Can you handle rent if I Venmo you my half?" "Of course. But are you okay? You seem shaken." "I'm fine, just unexpected news." She threw clothes into a suitcase with no real organization, needing to keep moving. "I'll call you when I can." The driver arrived exactly 1 hour later. He collected her suitcase without comment, opening the rear door of the same large black car from last night. They drove through Bari's morning traffic, heading away from the familiar university district toward the seacoast. They pulled up to a sleek, modern apartment building boasting private security and magnificent ocean views. The driver escorted her into a penthouse elevator that required both a key card and fingerprint access. "Whose fingerprint?" Ariella asked, startled. "Yours now." He handed her a magnetic key card. "Mr. Vitali arranged everything this morning." The elevator opened directly into a sprawling penthouse that made her student apartment look genuinely like a closet. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the vast Adriatic stretching out to the horizon, and the morning sun painted everything in warm, liquid gold. "This is excessive," she breathed, feeling overwhelmed by the luxury. "This is secure." Dante's deep voice came from behind her. She spun to find him emerging from what looked like a home office, dressed more casually than she had ever witnessed. Dark jeans, a black button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled precisely to reveal forearms that instantly made her mouth go dry. He looked younger like this, less like a lethal underboss and more like a man who might have been hers in a drastically different life. "How did you get here before me?" she asked, confused. "I never left. Had the driver take you on a slightly longer route while I ensured everything was ready." He gestured around the expansive space. "The guest room is yours. I've stocked the kitchen with basics, but we can arrange for whatever you prefer. My room is on the other side of the apartment if you need anything. We're living together." The reality hit her suddenly, powerfully. "For the next week, yes. It's the only way I can guarantee your safety without assigning you a full security detail." He moved into the kitchen area, pulling out coffee supplies. "I know it's not ideal. It's terrifying." She joined him at the counter, accepting the cup he poured. 3 weeks ago, I was a linguistics student with normal problems. Now I'm hiding in a penthouse with a mafia underboss who kissed me last night and I can't stop thinking about it. The raw confession made him pause mid-motion. "Ariella, you said no more lies. That includes lies I tell myself about what I want." She sat down her coffee cup, meeting his eyes directly, refusing to look away. "I've been attracted to you since day one. Tried to convince myself it was just intimidation or cultural fascination or anything except what it actually was. Then last night happened and now I can't pretend anymore." He set his own cup down carefully, precisely, as if he didn't entirely trust the steadiness of his own hands. "This isn't simple attraction. You understand that?" "I understand it's complicated and dangerous and probably a terrible idea." She moved around the counter, deliberately closing the distance between them. The distance that had suddenly become unbearable between them. A desperate certainty settled over him. He had never felt anything of this magnitude for another soul, and to retreat now, to deny the chance to explore this seismic shift, would be a regret that would define and destroy him. "I need you to understand this, Ariella. I am not a good man. The things I do, the choices I make, they are calculated acts of darkness. Loving one person, even you, does not offer me redemption." His voice rasped, heavy with self-loathing and truth. "To choose me is to willingly accept a kind of shadow, a permanent darkness that you can never scrub away once you've witnessed it." "Then show me everything," she demanded, her gaze unwavering, cutting through his fear. "Stop shielding me from the consequences of this choice. Let me see the reality so I can choose, fully informed." The internal conflict raging across his face was almost painful to watch. Duty and devastating desire locked in a silent, desperate battle. With a final, broken sigh, he surrendered. His hands found her, steady and impossibly gentle, a stark contrast to the inferno blazing in his eyes. "You asked for the truth. Here it is." He hauled her against him, crushing the last sliver of air between their bodies. "I have killed men, not in some desperate scramble for survival, but in cold, calculated executions carried out to secure my family's interests. I have issued orders for violence, authorized interrogation tactics that break people, and made strategic choices that haunt the quiet hours of my nights. I wonder often if I am already irreparably lost. And yet," she whispered, her voice husky, "my father, a man who knows the darkness of this world, entrusted me to you. Your father knew I would guard you with my life, without hesitation. That is a duty. It is not the same as being worthy of you," he countered, his voice aching. Ariella reached up, her fingers tracing the hard line of his jaw, feeling the rough stubble prickle her palm. "What if I decide that you are?" she asked, her eyes searching his. "Then I would dedicate every moment remaining to me trying to earn that impossible faith." He shifted his head, pressing a searing kiss into the soft center of her palm. "But you must be certain, Ariella. Absolutely certain. Once you are truly mine, once we cross this threshold, there is no returning to the safety of normal. This world takes people and it rarely ever lets them go." "I don't crave normal," she breathed, rising onto her toes, their mouths so close they shared the same sharp inhalation. "I want real. I want you." He paused, a visible struggle holding him rigid for a single, agonizing heartbeat. a final silent offer for her to run. Then, his formidable control fractured completely. This kiss was not the tentative, cautious exploration of the night before. It was ravenous, desperate, and utterly consuming. Weeks of agonizingly suppressed need burst forth like a tidal wave. His hands plunged into her hair, gripping gently but firmly, tilting her head back to deepen the contact while she clung to his shirt, the pricey material crumpling fiercely beneath her white-knuckled grasp. When they finally separated, dizzy and breathing heavily, Dante kept their connection intact, resting his forehead against hers. "Are you sure about this?" he murmured against her skin. "About us. I have never been more certain of anything in my life," she confirmed instantly. "Then we do this correctly," he decided, the decision firm. "I will court you properly. I will show you, slowly, what it means to be mine. Give you time to adapt before we—" He faltered, the unspoken desire momentarily stifling him. "Before we what?" Ariella asked, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips, enjoying his rare fluster. "Before I make you mine, in every single definition of the word." His eyes were alight with barely controlled fire. "I want you more than I want air, but I need you to be absolutely certain, willing, and completely aware of the world you're walking into." The sheer consideration behind his restraint caused her heart to swell. "How long is as long as it takes? As long as it takes for you to fully comprehend this dark existence and still choose to remain within it." He sealed the vow with a tender, possessive kiss. "I can exercise extreme patience when it truly counts. And if I decide I don't want you to be patient?" A low, guttural sound tore itself from his throat, part strained laugh, part desperate groan. "Then you are testing my control in ways that will likely break me entirely." The spell snapped abruptly. A discreet throat-clearing echoed from the apartment's elevator lobby. They recoiled instantly to find Luca emerging, his face a perfect mask of professional neutrality, holding a tablet. "My apologies for the intrusion, Dante, but we have a developing situation." In the space of a single breath, Dante's entire posture changed. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by a chilling, razor-sharp calculation. "Elaborate. What kind of situation?" "It involves the Calabrese family," Luca reported briskly. "They are aggressively sniffing around, asking pointed questions about the American girl. They're resurrecting talk of old debts and seeing you, Ariella, as potentially new leverage." Luca's gaze flicked briefly to her, burdened by understanding. "They know who she is, Dante, and they understand what she means to you. How deeply informed are they?" Dante demanded, his voice now flat and deadly. "Enough to be dangerous. Not enough to launch a direct engagement yet," Luca replied, handing over a secure tablet. "But they are actively contacting their informants, assembling intelligence." Dante scanned the screen's contents, his jaw hardening, a muscle ticking beneath his skin. "Immediately double the security perimeter on this building. No unauthorized personnel moves within 100 yards without immediate clearance. And arrange a sit-down with their underboss. If they want to talk terms, we will confront them directly. Are you certain that is prudent? A meeting lends legitimacy to their spurious claims. And avoiding it grants them the freedom to escalate the issue on their own terms," Dante retorted, thrusting the tablet back. "Secure a meeting for tomorrow night. A strictly neutral location. Full security deployment." Luca acknowledged the order with a crisp nod and disappeared into the adjacent office. The previous fragile intimacy of the room evaporated, leaving behind the cold, brutal architecture of Dante's reality. "This," Dante said quietly, gesturing to the silent office door, "is exactly what I warned you about. My existence, my decisions. They are a stone dropped into water, creating ripples that eventually overwhelm everyone I care about. Then teach me how to survive the tide," Ariella insisted, stepping closer. "You promised me truth and context. Start giving me the tools to navigate this now." He studied her defiance for a long beat, then nodded sharply. "Fine. Come with me." He led her into the technical office, a fortress of monitors and organized files where Luca had been working. This is the Calabrese family. He brought up a digital dossier, displaying grim photos and documents. They effectively control the majority of drug trafficking operations throughout southern Italy. We maintain a fragile, uneasy truce based on territorial respect. They stay out of our zones, we stay out of theirs. So why the sudden interest in me? She asked, already connecting the threads. The shift is you, or specifically, your connection to your father. He opened another encrypted file. Before Marco Monroe disappeared to America, he was instrumental in uncovering significant Calabrese corruption and several major operations. Key personnel were arrested and imprisoned directly because of the evidence he provided. They have always suspected the source, but your presence here, working directly for my family, validates their worst fears. He paused, his gaze intense. They view you now as dual leverage, either a weapon against me, or as a delayed revenge opportunity against your father's memory. The cold, tangible weight of the danger settled over Ariella's shoulders. So, what is our counter-move? We make an absolute, undeniable declaration, Dante stated, pulling her firmly back into the protective arc of his arm. We make it unequivocally clear that you are shielded by the full power of the Romani Syndicate, and any attempt to touch you is an act of war against the entire family structure. They will not risk open conflict over ancient history, but we must draw the boundaries sharply now, before a fool makes a fatal error. Is that the purpose of tomorrow night's meeting? She asked. Precisely. I will ensure they understand that your protection transcends simple professional duty or a debt owed to your father. You are mine, personally. That declaration transforms an attack on you into a specific, direct assault on me. A startling wave of possessive warmth surged through her at his unfiltered claim. And if they refuse to accept those terms? Dante's face darkened, the air turning frigid. Then we manage the consequences, whatever they may be. But they will accept. No sane faction desires the devastating war that opposing me over this would ignite. Luca reappeared from the office depths. The meeting is confirmed. Tomorrow at 8 p.m. at the Paradiso restaurant. They consented to our security requirements. Excellent. Assemble the primary team. Dante settled his hand firmly at the base of Ariella's spine, a proprietary gesture. She attends with me. What? Both Ariella and Luca spoke simultaneously, shock evident. If the goal is to establish her status, she must be present. Dante stated, his voice absolute. Concealing her suggests she is a vulnerability, rather than an undeniable strength. She attends. His tone brooked zero dissent. Furthermore, I want them to look into her eyes and see exactly the asset they dare to challenge. Luca looked deeply displeased, but capitulated. I will arrange the necessary protective detail. Once Luca was gone, Ariella turned to Dante, her voice a low challenge. You are deliberately using me as a political statement. I am presenting the undeniable truth, he corrected, his expression intense. That you are significant enough for me to shatter decades of family protocol, to introduce you into sensitive business, and to publicly claim you in a manner I have never afforded anyone else. He cradled her face, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. If that makes me appear possessive and territorial to them, I will never apologize for it. I'm not asking for an apology, she clarified. I'm asking you to keep me fully informed, so I'm not walking into a high-stakes scenario blind. Fair enough, he conceded, consulting the expensive watch strapped to his wrist. We have the remainder of today and all of tomorrow before we head out. I will initiate you in the necessary etiquette of the criminal underworld, the power dynamics, how to interpret unspoken signals, and crucially, how to defend yourself without weapons, verbally. A crash course in organized crime, she summarized dryly. His smile was fleeting, genuine, and utterly compelling. Think of it more as extreme, high-stakes cultural immersion. The rest of the afternoon was consumed in the quiet intensity of the office. Dante systematically laid out the intricate tapestry of family allegiances, the geography of their territories, and the 1,000 unwritten, lethal rules that structured his life. Ariella absorbed it all, scribbling rapid notes, asking incisive questions, attempting to master information that was simultaneously overwhelming and deeply fascinating. The central tenet, Dante stressed, leaning across the table, is that everything revolves around perception and enforced respect. Direct, public confrontation is avoided because it demands a public, often bloody, response. Most conflicts are carefully mediated through neutral intermediaries and intricate negotiations. So, tomorrow's meeting is essentially a formal negotiation of my value and standing, she confirmed. Precisely. They will attempt to identify vulnerabilities, challenge our resolution, and search for exploitable leverage. We will ensure they leave with the understanding that no such weakness exists, and that pressing this issue further will result in catastrophic cost, far outweighing any potential gain. And if they remain unconvinced? Dante's expression turned utterly glacial, devoid of warmth. Then I will ensure they are convinced. Whatever resources are required. The casual certainty with which he affirmed his readiness for lethal violence to protect her should have instilled terror. Instead, it delivered a profound, unsettling sense of security she hadn't known in weeks. Evening descended, painting the ocean outside in deepening hues of indigo and violet. Dante called in an order from an exclusive, discreet restaurant she didn't recognize, and they ate at the dining table. He began weaving narratives of his youth in the syndicate. I was 15 when I was sent on my first collection run, he admitted, pouring a deep red wine into her glass. I was terrified, but utterly resolute to prove my worth. The man we were collecting from, a dock foreman, was easily twice my size. He assumed he could easily intimidate a boy. And what was the outcome? My uncle, who is now the Don, intervened just before it reached violence. He instructed me that genuine power isn't derived from brute physical intimidation. It stems from absolute, unwavering certainty. When you possess the intrinsic knowledge that you will execute every threat, honor every promise, people sense that commitment. Is that the framework you use now? Primarily, I favor complex negotiation over messy conflict, but I have never, not once, issued a threat I wasn't prepared to immediately deliver upon. His gaze held hers across the polished wood. That is precisely why the Calabrese family will treat tomorrow night with the seriousness it deserves. They understand my reputation. After the meal, they migrated to the living room. Dante selected music, an old Italian melody, rich and melancholic, that enveloped the apartment in a gentle warmth. Ariella settled onto the plush sofa, observing the easy, proprietary way he moved through the luxurious space. Tell me something real, she requested abruptly, needing a tether back to the man beneath the cold commander. Not about the syndicate or my father or the impending danger. Tell me something strictly about Dante, something nobody else in this organization knows. He paused, contemplating her request with unusual gravity. He finally sat beside her, their thighs brushing, the small contact electric. I wanted to be an educator, he confessed quietly. A literature professor. I loved analysis, understanding character motivation, the architecture of narrative structure. What diverted that path? The immovable weight of family obligation. My uncle required absolute loyalty at the top tier, someone he knew would never betray the interests of the capo. And I was relentlessly conditioned for this role from my earliest memories. He stared down at his hands, those hands that gave and took life, looking profoundly alien. By the time the desire for a different life crystallized, I was already too deeply embedded. My choices had irrevocably sealed off all other futures. Do you harbor regret? Regret is a luxury that breeds weakness. Some days, yes, I taste it, but ultimately, I made my choices, and I inhabit the consequences. He turned, his focus settling entirely on her. Until 3 weeks ago, I was utterly convinced I had achieved a stable peace with this life being my singular destiny. Then you arrived in my office, querying the nuances of Italian verb conjugation, and the foundation shifted. What exactly shifted? I began sketching alternative realities in my mind. I started wondering about the man I might have evolved into had I chosen a different narrative structure for my life. His hand found hers across the cushions, fingers slotting together with instant, perfect familiarity. I started wanting things I'd ruthlessly persuaded myself were superfluous. Such as this. Sharing quiet space with someone who perceives me as more than a title or a transaction. Someone who forces me to contemplate concepts beyond mere duty and organizational power. He raised their joined hands, pressing a slow, deliberate kiss to her knuckles. Someone who actively inspires the desire to be a fundamentally better man than I currently am. The raw, unguarded vulnerability in his confession tightened Ariella's chest with a fierce tenderness. You already possess better qualities than you acknowledge. You have not yet seen all of me. Then show me, she insisted, leaning in. Show me all of it. Not only the dangerous, lethal parts. Show me the man who dreamt of teaching literature, the man who obsesses over narrative structure, who kisses me as if I am utterly irreplaceable. He pulled her onto his lap in a swift, practiced motion, one hand settling possessively at the curve of her waist. You are challenging my self-imposed rules. In what way? By requesting patience. By making this process slow. His forehead pressed against hers. A silent admission of defeat. Every instinct I possess screams for me to spend the next 7 days proving exactly how devastatingly I want you. Yet I am attempting to adhere to a shred of responsibility. What if I don't want responsibility tonight? Then you are pushing my control past dangerous breaking points. But he gave in, kissing her nonetheless. The kiss was slow, deep, consuming, and thorough. They remained locked together for what felt like eternity. Two adults kissing with the desperate abandon of teenagers, mapping the volatile new boundaries of their dynamic. When Ariella finally pulled back, breathless and slightly disoriented, Dante looked equally devastated. We should stop now, he murmured, though his hand remained a steady, anchoring weight on her waist. Probably. Yet neither of them moved an inch. Tomorrow will be fraught with complications. You need to be rested. As do you. He gave a strained, soft laugh. I haven't managed a proper night's sleep in 3 weeks. Not since your image began consuming my every waking and resting thought. His honesty emboldened her further. Stay with me tonight. Only sleeping. Nothing more. I just want the simple comfort of being near you. The war returned to his face, fierce and short-lived. He finally, reluctantly, nodded. Only sleeping. I cannot trust myself with anything more right now. They retreated to her assigned bedroom, a luxurious space offering panoramic views of the dark, glittering ocean. Dante vanished into his own quarters for only a moment, returning clad solely in black sleep pants. Ariella made a concerted effort to look anywhere but his torso, utterly failing as her eyes were drawn to the expanse of muscle and the complex geography of scars that narrated a history of lethal violence. Enjoying the view? He teased, a slight smirk playing on his lips. You are unfairly attractive and perfectly aware of it, she retorted, pulling back the silk sheets. Takes one to know one. He slipped into the bed beside her, immediately gathering her against the solid wall of his chest. Sleep, Ariella. Tomorrow requires your sharpest wits. Nestled against his heat, logic argued against the immense feeling of safety, yet she felt profoundly protected. Dante, thank you for this, she whispered into the darkness. For affording me the courtesy of the truth. Thank you for not sprinting out the door once you heard it, he countered, pressing a kiss into her hair. Now sleep. She eventually succumbed to exhaustion, lulled by the steady, powerful rhythm of his heartbeat, dreaming of futures that seemed tantalizingly within reach. Morning arrived far too early, the glare of sunlight an intrusion through the vast windows. Ariella woke to find her side of the bed empty and Dante's pillow cool. Low, intense male voices drifted from the main living space. Pulling a thick silk robe around her, she emerged to find Dante and Luca mid-discussion, a serious exchange instantly ceasing upon her appearance. Morning, she offered, sudden self-consciousness making her feel awkward. Good morning, Dante replied, his expression softening fractionally. Coffee is prepared. We have approximately 6 hours before we must depart for the meeting. The reminder sent a cold wash of adrenaline through her stomach. What are my final instructions? How should I comport myself? You will behave as yourself, but significantly more reserved, he directed, handing her a mug of strong espresso. Allow me to monopolize the conversation. If they address you directly, answer with polite brevity, but volunteer absolutely nothing. And stay physically anchored next to me at all times. Is the threat truly that high? It is likely not, Luca interjected gravely. But we do not, under any circumstance, compromise on your security. They dedicated the remainder of the morning to intense role-playing, running through potential scenarios, and drilling Ariella in the specialized, subtle art of syndicate diplomacy. By the time lunch arrived, her mind felt saturated with complex information regarding hierarchy, enforced respect, and the thousands of silent, mandatory rules that governed every exchange. You are clearly overthinking the specifics, Dante observed, watching her pace the edge of the plush rug. Simply adhere to my lead, and you will navigate this flawlessly. That is facile for you to say, she countered, frustrated. You have been immersed in this reality since childhood. He captured her restless hand, compelling her to stop pacing. Ariella, look at me. When her eyes met his, the intensity held her captive. I will not permit anything to happen to you. That is not an exaggeration born of bravado. It is a fundamental fact. You will be the single most crucial entity in that room tonight, and I will ensure that every man there comprehends that truth. The absolute certainty in his vow served as an immediate anchor, quieting the storm of her anxiety. All right, I trust you. Good. He gave her a brief, reassuring kiss. Now we cease the preparation. You are stressing yourself unnecessarily. The afternoon was spent in surprisingly pedestrian, grounding activities. Dante, demonstrating a surprising and unexpected culinary proficiency, prepared a simple but exquisite lunch that drew laughter from Ariella. They watched a classic Italian film, Dante translating the rapid-fire dialogue and cultural jokes she would have missed. They deliberately discussed everything except the impending confrontation, and the oppressive knot of tension gradually dissolved from her shoulders. As twilight bled into full evening, the looming reality returned. Luca materialized with a heavy, professional garment bag. For this evening, Luca explained. Dante felt an appropriate presentation was necessary. Inside the bag was a masterpiece of tailoring, a deep emerald silk gown that easily surpassed the value of her entire previous wardrobe. It was cut to be elegantly sophisticated, designed to be striking without betraying formality, its color perfect against her skin. It is truly beautiful, she whispered, tracing the luxurious fabric. Verify the fit, Dante instructed, his tone businesslike. She retreated to her room, carefully slipping the cool silk over her skin. The dress settled perfectly, obviously custom-fitted to her specific measurements. Looking into the mirror, she saw a poised, worldly woman she hardly recognized. When she emerged, the raw, unguarded look on Dante's face was the most profound compliment. He stared, momentarily breathless, his eyes dark with an intense blend of desire and proprietary awe. You are utterly magnificent, he stated, the words clipped. You clean up remarkably well yourself, she managed, meeting his gaze. He was immaculate in a custom black suit, likely valued more than the small car she'd left parked in the States. Luca performed a formal throat clearing. We depart in 10 minutes. The advanced security detail is positioned. The journey to the restaurant unfolded in an unnerving, tight silence. Ariella was seated beside Dante in the armored sedan, her hand held firmly captive in his powerful grasp. She could feel the intense, coiled kinetic energy radiating off him, the instantaneous transition from the chef who shared light jokes to the ruthless Capo preparing for deadly negotiation. The Paradiso restaurant had been wholly commandeered, its normal operations suspended for this exclusive, high-stakes rendezvous. Armed security personnel, Luca's men, formed an intimidating perimeter around every entrance. Ariella counted a minimum of a dozen clearly visible armed figures. Dante assisted her from the car, his hand immediately staking its claim at the base of her spine as they moved toward the entrance. Inside, the restaurant was a vision of old-world elegance. Crisp white linens, glittering crystal and polished silver. But the atmosphere was heavy, certainly not conducive to romance. 3 men were already seated at a central table. The eldest, a silver-haired man with unervingly sharp eyes, rose slowly as they approached. Dante Vitali, thank you for accommodating our request. Don Calabrese? Dante replied, his tone perfectly calibrated, respectful, yet entirely devoid of deference. Allow me to formally introduce Ariella Monroe. She is presently under the explicit protection of the Romani family. The Don's assessing gaze swept over Ariella with a cold, almost predatory intensity. Marco Monroe's daughter. I recall your father distinctly. I am informed you were recently engaged in brief professional collaboration? Ariella maintained a deliberate, icy composure, ignoring the frantic hammering of her heart. We were. He possessed a remarkable talent with figures, but proved distinctly less gifted in the area of loyalty. The intended sharpness of her retort was designed to be provocative. Dante's hand compressed warningly on her back. The past is a relevant history. Dante cut in smoothly. Don Calabrese, we are here solely to establish terms regarding the present situation. They took their seats, and silent waiters appeared with expensive wine and delicate appetizers, none of which were touched. The 2 men positioned next to Don Calabrese watched Ariella with a mix of avid curiosity and undisguised antagonism. So, the Don began, cutting straight to the core issue. You have acquired Marco Monroe's daughter. What is she, precisely? An employee? A ward? Perhaps a mistress? She is mine, Dante stated simply, the finality in his voice crushing all possible ambiguity. Under my personal, explicit protection, which automatically extends the full shield of the Romani family. Any move against her is defined as a direct declaration of hostility toward me, specifically. Intriguing, Calabrese mused, sipping his ruby wine slowly. I understood her to be a mere intern, doing translation work to pay academic fees. Now, she is suddenly an asset worth risking established family alliances? She is worth exactly whatever I determine her value to be, Dante countered, the inherent threat beneath the measured words causing one of the flanking men to twitch nervously. And I have come here merely as a courtesy, to clarify her status before you commit an unfortunate, irreversible misunderstanding. What misunderstandings are you implying? We have no strategic interest in some American college girl. Then this negotiation should conclude instantly, Dante replied, leaning back, projecting an image of devastating, casual certainty. Acknowledge her defined status, and we can all resume our existing, profitable arrangements. Don Calabrese scrutinized them both for an agonizingly long period. Your father, he said, shifting his focus to Ariella, cost my family a painful amount. Key people vanished into prison. Operations collapsed. We absorbed losses in the millions. You must concede that some among us would view his daughter's sudden appearance as a chance for long-awaited recompense. Before Dante could intercede, Ariella spoke, her voice clear and carrying across the silent table. I do comprehend that my father made calculated choices 20 years ago that accrued consequences for your organization. However, I am not my father, and attempting to punish me for his decisions constitutes a violation of virtually every code of honor your world professes to uphold. The Don's silver eyebrows arched slightly. Bold pronouncements from one so new to our traditions. Honest pronouncements from someone who refuses to feign ignorance or weakness, she corrected, holding his gaze without blinking. My father extracted me from this world to secure a better life. Dante is honoring that sacrifice by ensuring my safety. If you genuinely aspire to be known as men of honor, you will respect both the sacrifice and the protection. A profound silence enveloped the table. Dante's hand found hers beneath the white cloth, squeezing with a pressure that felt like both approval and a restraining warning. Finally, Don Calabrese broke the tension with a dry, unsettling chuckle. I begin to understand why you are claiming her, Vitali. She certainly has spine. He addressed his associates. What say you? Is challenging the Romani worth the resurrection of ancient history? The man on his right shook his head decisively. No, Don. Not worth the risk. Boss, the girl's right. Our conflict was solely with the father, not with her. Agreed, the other man conceded, his voice grudging yet definitive. And picking a fight with Vital over a woman, especially one who showed that kind of nerve, would only make us look weak and petty to the wider organization. Don Calabrese nodded slowly, considering the weight of the decision. Very well. The girl is under your protection, Dante. We will respect that boundary. He pushed back his chair and stood, extending his hand across the table in a gesture of truce. But understand this one condition. If she causes trouble, if she, even accidentally, gets involved in any business that directly concerns us, this courtesy ends immediately. Dante stood as well, meeting the Don's gaze firmly while shaking the offered hand. She won't. She's not part of operations. She's simply under family care and protection. You have my word on that. Then we are done here. The Don offered a small, almost imperceptible nod toward Ariella. You've got fire, girl. Try not to let it burn you alive. The meeting concluded as abruptly as it had begun, the tension dissipating instantly as the Calabrese men rose. Dante guided Ariella swiftly out of the private room and through the bustling restaurant, his hand a solid anchor pressing into the small of her back until they were safely enclosed in the silent, dark interior of the armored car. The moment the doors clicked shut, isolating them from the world outside, he pulled her into his arms with a groan of profound relief. That was either incredibly brave or just astonishingly reckless. Which do you think? Both. He claimed her mouth in a hard, demanding kiss, relief and adrenaline spiking equally between them. You could have gotten yourself killed speaking to him with that level of defiance. But I didn't. And I think deep down I actually earned his respect. She leaned back slightly, her gaze searching his face for confirmation. Was I wrong to push back? No. You were perfect. Pride, startlingly intense, colored his voice. You handled yourself better than most hardened men twice your age. But please, Ariella, do not make a habit of publicly challenging Mafia Dons. Only when absolutely necessary, she countered, a flash of her inherent stubbornness returning. He laughed, the sound surprised and genuine, a deep rumble in his chest that settled her racing heart. What am I ever going to do with you? Keep me, protect me, maybe kiss me again, she offered, feeling suddenly giddy with the heady mix of adrenaline, overwhelming relief, and the knowledge that she had just survived her first true trial in his complex, dangerous world. All of the above, then. He sealed the promise by claiming her mouth again, deeper and slower this time. A kiss that was both celebratory of their victory and deeply possessive. When they finally arrived back at the penthouse overlooking the coast, Luca was waiting in the great room with an undeniably approving smile. Well done, both of you. Words are already spreading throughout the city that the Calabrese family has backed down completely. Your status is established, Ariella. What does that mean practically? She asked, moving closer to Dante for reassurance. It means you are formally recognized as being under Romani protection. Other families will now think twice or 3 times before making any aggressive moves against you. Luca headed toward the elevator, his expression becoming slightly more serious. It also means you are officially part of this world now, for better or worse. After Luca had departed, leaving the penthouse feeling vast and quiet, Dante poured them both a measure of rich, red wine. They stood side by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the Italian night settle in layers of velvet shadow over the sweeping coastal landscape. There's no going back now, Ariella said quietly, the weight of Luca's words settling upon her. She turned to face him fully, checking his reaction. Having second thoughts? Not even a little bit. That entire encounter was terrifying and exhilarating and completely insane. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. Even normal, safe, the life your father wanted for you? My father wanted me happy above all else. I think he would understand that my definition of happiness looks profoundly different than he might have imagined. She set down her wine glass with deliberate finality, closing the small space between them. I'm choosing this, choosing you, fully aware of what it means. His large hands came up to tenderly frame her face, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. You're sure, Miyakara? Because once I truly make you mine, I won't be able to let you go, ever. Then don't. She rose onto her toes, bringing their lips excruciatingly close. I don't want gentle or patient anymore, Dante. I want real. I want you to stop holding back everything you are. The last fragile remnants of his control shattered. He lifted her easily, without effort, and she wrapped her legs instinctively around his waist as he carried her swiftly toward his bedroom. The kiss was hungry now, a desperate, consuming heat, all the agonizing restraint of the past weeks finally breaking free. He laid her on his massive, luxurious bed with a surprising, almost reverent gentleness, given the raw intensity burning between them. Tell me to stop and I will. Anytime, for any reason. I don't want you to stop. She reached for him, pulling him down to cover her body with the solid, protective weight of his. I want everything you've been holding back. What followed was slow. Despite the desperate, mutual hunger, Dante took his time, painstakingly removing her dress, kissing every inch of newly exposed skin like he was memorizing her topography, committing it forever to his memory. When she impatiently reached for the buttons on his shirt, he helped. And then they were skin to skin, and nothing in Ariella's life had ever felt more utterly, profoundly right. You're so beautiful, he murmured against her throat, the words ragged. I've imagined this moment so many times since the day we met, but reality is infinitely better. She couldn't form words, too lost in a flood of sensation and emotion, when he finally made them one. He moved with a careful, controlled strength that demanded she arch into him, demanding more. At that moment, she felt something shift fundamentally inside her chest. This wasn't just physical release. It was a claiming and a willing surrender, an act built on trust and vulnerability, the ultimate expression of everything unspoken between them. Later, they lay tangled together, sweat cooling on their skin, while the coastal moonlight painted stark silver across the sheets. Dante held her close, one heavy hand stroking lazy, comforting patterns on her back. I love you, he said quietly, his voice raspy from exhaustion and emotion. I know it's too soon, too fast, but it's true. I think I've loved you from the moment you walked into my office and challenged me about that contract translation. Tears pricked the back of her eyes, a sweet, unexpected sting. I love you too. I tried so hard to fight it. I told myself it was just attraction or temporary Stockholm syndrome, or anything except what it actually was. But I love you, Dante Vital, in all your complicated, dangerous, beautiful reality. He kissed her softly, tasting the salt of her tears. I'll spend the rest of my life earning that love, being worthy of your faith in me. You already are. She snuggled closer, fitting her body perfectly against his. So what happens now? Do I go back to being an intern who happens to be sleeping with her boss? You can if you want the mundane pretense, or you can take on a more official, recognized role in the family organization. Use your intelligence and your skills in ways that actually matter, ways that impact the flow of power. He shifted onto an elbow to look down at her. I am not asking you to become like me, to embrace violence or make compromises you can't live with. But there are legitimate, strategic aspects of our operations where your intellect and perspective would be invaluable. Like what? Translation and cultural consulting, obviously, but also strategic planning, high-level communications, the parts of this world that don't require bloodshed. His hand cupped her cheek, warm and reassuring. I want you beside me, Ariella, in every way that matters. Personally, professionally, completely. Then that's where I'll be. She sealed the promise with a fierce, quiet kiss. Your world, our life together. They fell asleep wrapped tightly around each other, and for the first time in weeks, neither of them struggled with nightmares. The next morning brought a flood of golden sunlight and the rich, comforting scent of brewing coffee. Ariella awoke alone again, but smiled when she heard Dante moving around confidently in the kitchen. She pulled on one of his shirts, drowning pleasantly in the expensive fabric, and patted out to find him competently making a breakfast that smelled far too delicious for a hardened mafia underboss. "Morning," he said, pulling her in for a thorough, lingering kiss that tasted of coffee and promise. "Sleep well?" "Better than I have in years, maybe decades." "Better than I have in weeks," she agreed, accepting the steaming mug he handed her. "What's the agenda for today?" "Luca wants to brief us on some key intelligence that came in overnight regarding the ports. After that, though, I thought maybe we could do something completely normal. Walk along the coast, visit that museum you wanted to see, pretend for a few hours that we're just a couple instead of being tied up in global mafia politics." "That sounds perfect." They spent the morning in focused meetings that quickly revealed the complex, intricate web of information and localized power that kept the Romani family functional and prosperous. Ariella asked sharp, intuitive questions, took detailed notes, and began to truly understand the strategic, long-term thinking that separated successful families from short-lived, chaotic ones. By the mid-afternoon, they were walking along Bari's picturesque waterfront, Dante's hand clasped firmly and openly in hers. A discreet security detail followed at a respectful distance, but for a few precious hours, they could almost pretend to be normal tourists. "Tell me about your mother," Dante said as they stopped to watch the waves crash against the seawall. "Your father mentioned her in his letter, but he gave very little detail. She died when I was 3. Cancer, fast and brutal, the type that gives you no warning." Ariella leaned against the cool railing, gazing out at the endless blue horizon. "I barely remember her. Just impressions. The particular way she smelled, how her laugh sounded, the softness of her hands. Dad never remarried. He always said she was it for him. Like you are for me." She turned to smile at him, amused. "Dramatic much?" "Honest. I've had relationships, physical encounters, things that served a purpose and filled a need. But I have never felt like this, like you are truly essential to my existence. A fundamental necessity." He pulled her close, anchoring her against his side. "You're it for me, Ariella Monroe. The only woman who will ever have this particular, absolute power over me." "What power is that?" "The power to make me want to be better. To question choices I've accepted without thought for years. To imagine futures that don't revolve entirely around duty and inescapable family obligation." He kissed her temple, pressing his lips to her skin. "You've rewritten everything I thought I knew about myself." "Good, because you've done the same for me." She rose onto her toes to kiss him properly, fully, not caring at all about the passing tourists or the watching security detail. "I came to Italy expecting dusty museums and language practice. I got mafia politics and the love of my life instead." "Any regrets about that exchange?" "Not a single one." They spent the remainder of the day exploring Bari like genuine tourists, visiting ancient churches, browsing chaotic markets, eating messy, decadent gelato, and pretending the underlying danger wasn't always one short step behind them. By evening, they were both pleasantly exhausted and deeply happy, stumbling back to the penthouse wrapped around each other, laughing softly. The following week passed in a beautiful, intense blur of strategy sessions and stolen moments, high-stakes meetings and passionate interludes. Ariella quickly learned the complex rhythms of Dante's world, discovered precisely where her unique skills could contribute meaningfully, and began to carve out her own necessary place in this complicated, demanding life. On their final morning in the penthouse, before she was scheduled to return to her semi-normal life, Dante presented her with a small, weighted wooden box. "What's this?" She opened it to find a delicate but substantial gold necklace with a beautifully worked pendant bearing the distinct Romani family crest, the symbol of their power and authority. "It's a statement," he explained, taking it gently from the box. "Anyone who sees this knows 2 things instantly: you are under absolute family protection, and that you belong to me specifically." He fastened the chain around her neck, the metal cool against her skin. "If you're uncomfortable wearing it, I understand. But I wanted you to have the choice." Ariella touched the pendant, feeling its weight and the solid craftsmanship. The crest was sharp and beautiful. "I'll wear it proudly," she asserted. "You're sure? It is essentially announcing to the world that you are irrevocably mine. Then the world should know." She turned back to kiss him, full of fierce conviction. "I'm not ashamed of loving you, Dante. I'm not hiding what we are to each other." Pride and a burning, absolute possession blazed in his dark eyes. "I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway." They returned to their semi-normal life after that intense week. Ariella moved into a new apartment that Dante insisted upon, one with state-of-the-art security and close proximity to family operations. She continued her studies but officially took on high-level translator and cultural consulting work for Romani interests, using her intellectual skills in ways that felt immediately meaningful. 3 months later, she stood in Dante's private office during a major family meeting, providing real-time, flawless translation for complex negotiations with a French syndicate that sought new territorial agreements. When the meeting ended successfully, Don Romani, Enzo, pulled her aside, his heavy face creased with genuine admiration. "Your father would be incredibly proud," he said simply, his voice low. "You've honored his memory while simultaneously building your own necessary place in our world." "Thank you, Don Romani. Call me Enzo. Your family now, officially if not yet legally." His knowing, significant look made her blush deeply. That night, Dante took her to dinner at an exclusive, secluded restaurant perched precariously overlooking the coast. They had settled into comfortable, deep rhythms over the past months, learning each other's quirks and boundaries, building something profoundly real beyond the initial, fiery intensity. "I have a question," he said, setting down his wine glass over their pasta. "Just one?" "That's unusual for you," she teased, smiling back at him. "Marry me. Not because of family politics or protection status, though both are reasons enough. Marry me because I love you more than I knew it was humanly possible to love anyone." Her breath caught painfully in her throat. "Dante, I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring out the mechanics of this life, but I am utterly certain about you, about us, about building a lasting life together." He pulled out a box containing a ring, simple, heavy, and beautiful, reflecting the enduring strength of the man offering it. "So what do you say, Ariella Monroe? Will you marry a mafia underboss and embrace all the complications that come with him?" She didn't hesitate for a fraction of a second. "Yes, absolutely. Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and when he kissed her, she tasted salt and realized she was crying. Happy tears, overwhelmed tears, tears for the incredible life she had found when she had stopped looking for it entirely. "I love you," she whispered against his mouth. "I love you too, more than words can express." He pulled back slightly to study her face, committing the moment to memory. "Thank you for seeing past the danger and the darkness to the man underneath. For choosing this life when you could have chosen predictability and safety. Thank you for being worth choosing." She kissed him again, a renewed surge of passion flowing between them. "Now take me home and show me exactly how much you love me." "With pleasure." They left the restaurant wrapped around each other, security trailing discreetly behind. They were two people who had found something precious and unbreakable in the unlikeliest, most dangerous of places. The future would inevitably bring new challenges and dangers, complications that were inherent to loving someone in Dante's position. But they would face it together, bound by love and choice, and the absolute certainty that some things were worth any risk. 6 months later, they married in a small, private ceremony attended only by family and the few trusted friends who truly understood their world. Ariella wore white silk and the delicate gold Romani crest. And when Dante lifted her veil, the raw, unfiltered love in his eyes made her forget about every sacrifice this new life required. "Mine," he murmured, just for her ears. "Yours," she agreed, her heart overflowing. "Always." And in the sprawling coastal city of Bari, where mafia politics and passionate romance intertwined, they built a life that honored both duty and desire, power and love, the inevitable darkness they couldn't escape, and the brilliant, singular light they created together. It wasn't the quiet story Ariella had expected when she had arrived in Italy. anticipating only cultural exploration and quiet study. It was infinitely better because sometimes the most dangerous men made the safest havens, and sometimes love meant embracing complications instead of running from them. And sometimes, a linguistic student from America and an Italian mafia underboss could find their forever in the most unlikely of circumstances, built on absolute truth, unwavering trust, and the courage to choose each other every single day. Their story was only just beginning, but Ariella knew with absolute, fierce certainty that it would be worth every twist and turn ahead because she had found her home in Dante's arms, her profound purpose in his world, and her deepest happiness in a life she had never imagined wanting. And that was worth everything.